In the small shopping area, there's a restaurant run by the Soma family, and today, father and son showcase their cooking skills by competing against each other, then serving a girl to taste their signature fried rice dish. After the girl tasted a piece from each side, once again, the father emerged victorious. The son is Yukihira Soma, and the father is the owner of the restaurant named Yukihira Joichiro. And this marks Soma's 489th defeat against his father. Anyone who tried a bite of his father's fried rice found it incredibly delicious, making their bodies elated. But at this point, Soma crafted a new dish, grilled squid with butter. It's another terrifying dish he created, and when he had the girl try it, its taste was dreadful, as if an octopus were crawling on her body. Yet, Soma proudly declared that his dish was more terrifying than his father's in terms of the worst taste, and the restaurant continued to operate as usual. In the evening, when the Yukihira restaurant closed, Yeiko Minigasaki, someone from a newly established upscale restaurant chain, arrived and demanded that the father and son sell the Yukihira restaurant. Of course, Soma wouldn't agree. He said that no matter what, they would serve the dish that the customers requested. Upon hearing this, she proposed a bet: if Soma satisfied her with the food, she wouldn't bother their shop anymore. But if not, Soma would have to hand over the restaurant and quit cooking. Okay, deal. Soma, afraid of who? He arranged to meet her again the next evening. But the next evening, when he returned from school, he found his shop vandalized, with the signboard also painted over. He also didn't see his father. At this moment, the girl appeared and mocked him, saying the shop today was decorated much more beautifully than yesterday. Inside, Yeiko and her entourage were sitting there. She challenged Soma to make a meat dish that would satisfy her, or else hand over the restaurant to her. Soma was truly enraged, and he accepted the challenge. Soma took off the towel on his hand and wrapped it around his forehead to show his determination. Although he didn't have enough ingredients in stock. With a few pieces of smoked meat left for breakfast along with potatoes, mushrooms, and some herbs, he made a roasted meat dish by wrapping smoked meat around mashed potatoes and baking them. He called it mischievous roasted meat. Yeiko was not satisfied and angrily demanded him to hand over the restaurant. However, he challenged Yeiko again, forcing her to eat them. Soma's dish was truly delicious and it caused a reaction in Yeiko's body. At this point, Soma explained that he had finely chopped onions and mushrooms mixed with boiled potatoes, then wrapped around the meat and slowly baked in the microwave, making the outside crispy and the inside soft and warm, creating the flavor of the dish. Yeiko intended to take another bite, but Soma took it away and said that if she promised not to bother the shop anymore, he would let her continue eating, otherwise, he would leave. Seeing her favorite food about to be taken away, Yeiko reluctantly agreed to Soma's condition. She and her bodyguards continued to enjoy the food. Eating it made her and her bodyguards feel like they were immersed in the dish. Let's all enjoy the food. I'll go find something to eat too. With the task accomplished, the next day Soma began to tidy up his restaurant. At this time, his father had returned home. He told Soma that he would close the shop for 2 to 3 years, which surprised Soma because he had tried to protect the restaurant that his father intended to close. His father said it was time for him to soar higher. He told Soma to go to culinary school to learn cooking, and if he graduated in 3 years, the restaurant would be his. Soma felt absurd to spend money on culinary school, but when he arrived, he saw many people begging for their children to attend this school, and it was Totsuki Academy, the foremost culinary and tea school in Japan. The pass rate at the school was below 10%. Here, Nikiri Arena, the 10th seat of the Elite 10, was tasting and criticizing the dishes of the school's students as if she were bathing with monkey. With her stern face and powerful voice, she made those people kneel down to apologize. Meanwhile, Soma was still stunned by what he saw, and his father told him that the school was Japan's #1 culinary school. At this point, Soma asked where his father was going while he was going to school, and his father said he was serving at a 5-star restaurant in New York. All the customers there loved the dishes Joichiro made. Even the monks stripped off their clothes to break the boundaries just to eat his dishes. At this moment, Joichiro went out to the balcony and told Soma that if he didn't stay at the school until graduation, he shouldn't hope to surpass him. Hearing this, Soma was even more determined to graduate from this school. He walked inside and accidentally kicked a chair where a young aristocrat was sitting enjoying tea. But he didn't get angry and invited Soma to sit down. He introduced himself and said he owned a French-style restaurant. Hearing this, Soma also mentioned that his family also had a restaurant. Then Nikaido said that the contestants here all had their own restaurants. But when Soma said that his restaurant served ordinary food, the boy kicked him out of the chair, saying it was low-class common food. This academy was a sacred place where only sophisticated people were allowed. Hearing this, Soma angrily grabbed the boy by the collar, making him foam at the mouth, looking terrified. So, everyone passing by looked at him with disdain as he entered the preliminary round. The examiner this time was Irina, who ordered the staff to bring out the ingredient, which was eggs today. Make a dish that pleases my palate, and if anyone is scared, leave quickly. So the crowd started running like bees leaving a broken hive, and Nikaido told Soma that she had the best human palate ever. Since she was 3 months old, she could speak and criticize her mother's milk. The older she got, the more excellent her tongue's discernment became, making many people want her to judge their food, and if she rejected anyone, they would never rise in the culinary career. Then Nikaido ran off, leaving only Irina and Hisako there. Irina said she would go back to her room to try a new dish she had created and asked Hisako if she wanted to try it. In the romantic atmosphere, Soma gently interrupted and asked if he could participate, surprising Irina because who would dare to compete? He asked if he could make anything, right? Then went to pat Irina on the shoulder. Then he ignored what they said and started choosing utensils and ingredients. Then he began rolling up his sleeves and immediately started cooking. While he was busy cooking, Irina came over and asked what he was making. Soma said he was making a dish from the restaurant's special menu, a type of dish mixed with hot rice. Hearing this, Irina said she was too busy to eat such ordinary dishes. Soma said of course this dish would be special, and in the end, he completed the dish, which was a bowl of egg mixed with rice. This made Irina disappointed, complaining that his tongue was only used to eating fancy dishes, not whatever that dish was. But Soma lifted the bowl and said there was a secret inside the dish. Irina was curious in return, pouring the egg into the hot rice, and the other ingredients started to melt into the rice, creating a very fragrant bowl of rice. Well, Irina also wanted to taste that dish. When she took a bite, the food was so delicious that she forgot she had to judge it, but when she tried to take a second bite, Soma teased her, saying, "Hey, give some feedback, why eat so much? I eat a lot, so what? You can't stop me from enjoying it now." She ate the second bite and realized that those ingredients were frozen soup, and Soma confirmed that it was frozen chicken wing soup. He blanched the chicken wings, salmon, sake, and soy sauce, then cooled them and cut them into pieces. Irina felt that the frozen soup was really great, but she didn't want to admit that such a delicious dish was made by a low-class commoner. But really, the food was so delicious that Irina couldn't stand still. Soma, seeing this, jumped up and asked if the food was good. But Irina, with her pride, said it was terrible and then angrily punched the wall and walked out. So Soma failed in a completely absurd way. Just look at the kid's face, and you'll understand. Megumi is a girl from the snowstorm region, and people in the village are really looking forward to her going to the city to learn cooking to come back and serve her homeland. They thought she would try to learn how, but she always got E grades and was notified that if she got another E, she would be expelled. On the day of the opening ceremony, she felt like she was standing on the brink. Today is the opening ceremony. At this time the principal of Totsuki Academy, the head of the culinary industry of that school is Mr. Senzaman, stood up to speak about the rigorous training process at this school. He said that last year there were over 1,000 first-year high school students, but only 100 people moved on to the second year, with a ratio of less than 10%, so when they graduated, only a few could count on their fingers. Then he declared that they should sharpen themselves and stay at this school. At this time, Irina was sitting on the backrest and arrogantly confident because she was the essence of culinary art. At this time, the host stood up and invited transfer students, which made her think of Soma right away, and it was him indeed. She never thought she would see him again, but when she looked over, there was no one but Soma. Meanwhile, Soma was standing up to speak. After introducing his name, he succinctly said that he would take the first place, making all the students below hate him bitterly. If you're good, you can fight. When they entered the waiting area, Irina was also sitting there. She went over to ask why he was here, then Soma said, "I got the acceptance letter, so I came in, what's the matter?" Soma also knew that Irina's criticism of his terrible food that day was all lies. And he said that he had been in the kitchen since he was 5-year-old and for 12 years only ate and slept in the kitchen. He would not let anyone criticize the food from his restaurant. In the first class, they were paired up, and it seemed like no one wanted to be paired with the loudmouth. But the one who dared to take risks was the one who dared, and he was paired with Megumi, making her cry because she had to be paired with the loudmouth from earlier. Megumi was not afraid of Soma but was afraid of the disdainful looks of the people around her. Today they were taught by the French teacher, Laurent Chapelle, who was known as the teacher who never smiled and could give an entire class of 50 students E grades. Today's menu was braised beef with a cooking time of 2 hours. Everyone started busily preparing the food, but Megumi looked at Soma calmly, making her tremble because she only needed one more E to be expelled. It's best to do it diligently on your own, and after the preliminary steps, it was time for the meat preparation. But at this point, Soma saw that the lid was not tight, and seeing the group next to them laughing, he opened the lid to reveal a pile of white powder on the piece of beef, which was salt. So the dish was ruined, and there were only 30 minutes left, and they might have to receive an E grade. But at this point, Soma calmly took out the spare ingredients and started cooking. When the time was up, the others were sure that Soma's dish wouldn't be ready. But Soma and Megumi confidently brought the beef dish to be scored by the teacher, making them feel like they were dreaming. The teacher tried to press with a fork. The moist and juicy piece of beef made him also amazed because he knew that Soma had been fooled, and he thought that he didn't bring the food on time. Soma explained that he had used honey to marinate the meat, and honey contained protein-digesting enzymes that made the meat tender faster. At this point, the teacher and Megumi tasted it, and surprisingly the food felt like it was blending with honey. And at this point, a smile appeared on the teacher's face. He gave Soma's group an A grade, and he felt annoyed because he didn't have the authority to give a higher grade. The cheating duo was completely surprised by Soma's dish, which caused their pot of meat to burn, and pouring the salt shaker into it resulted in both of them receiving an easy E grade. After the class, Megumi came to thank Soma. So Soma invited her to try his new dish, which was grilled squid with honey, leaving her in awe. That evening, Soma had to trek to find his dorm, and when he arrived, he was stunned because the dormitory seemed a bit scary. It looked like a haunted house. As soon as he entered, the bookshelf fell over, and wild animals ran around the house. Is this supposed to be a dormitory for students? Fumio, the dormitory caretaker, appeared. She told Soma to cook, but the kid replied that if she wanted to cook, he had already eaten. Then Fumio said, the rule of the dormitory is that if you want to stay here, you need to cook a dish, and the judge is the dormitory manager. If the dish is enough to satisfy the judge, then you can stay in the dormitory, otherwise, you sleep outside. When he entered the kitchen, he saw that this area of the dormitory was the best, clean and bright, with fresh vegetables, onions, eggs, rice, breadcrumbs, and a variety of ingredients. So Soma confidently began to cook, and after a series of steps, he made an extremely delicious hamburger. The main ingredient of this hamburger was canned tuna mashed together with eggs, onions, and breadcrumbs. Then squeeze out the water and fry in oil to create a hamburger that was flexible and adapted to the Soma brand. The dish was served, and Fumio tasted a piece. It was really delicious, like a hamburger made from beef, alongside a bowl of egg soup, a truly delicious flavor. Soma used squid ink to cook and added a bit of salt with eggs. That taste made Fumio remember her youth with her boyfriend in the countryside and think about kissing. Stay away from me, old lady. In the bathroom, Megumi was bathing and complaining about having to experiment with Soma's terrible food today. Then Soma came in naked and awkwardly, and the two had a somewhat awkward situation. After bathing, he returned to his room, and at this point, someone on the ceiling opened a tile to talk to Soma, surprising him and inviting him to the next room to chat and get acquainted. Everyone chatted happily. Soma learned about a new force at his school, the Elite 10, the Top 10. In the school, these students largely decide matters related to academics. And in this dormitory, it's where many Elite 10 members were born. At this moment, Ishiki stood up as the senior of this dormitory area and warmly welcomed Soma to this sophisticated dormitory area. They began to chat, eat, and cook together. When the two guys were about to confront each other, a girl intervened, but they dismissed her, insulting her for keeping wild animals indoors and mocking her for smelling bad. Well, that's the end for those two. Soma also presented his most dreadful dish for everyone to try, while Ishiki started a hip-swiveling dance in his small apron. Everyone laughed and enjoyed themselves, including Fumio, who was in her room, relishing the tranquility and the sounds of laughter from the students. Soma tasted Ishiki's fish dish, and it was truly delicious. It was then that he learned that Ishiki was a member of the Elite 10, ranked 7th. Ishiki also wanted to taste the dish Soma cooked, so he told him to get on with it. After carefully analyzing Ishiki's dish, which was a Spanish mackerel dish, Soma decided to use the same main ingredient, mackerel, for his dish. In the kitchen, Ishiki sat beside Soma, watching him cook over the blazing flames. After a while, Soma finished cooking and invited everyone who had just woken up to join him for a meal. It was rice ball with mackerel, drizzled with seaweed-infused salted tea. Because of its delicate salty flavor, which complemented the dish perfectly. Soma poured it inside. Ishiki thought it was just a very ordinary dish, but after tasting it, he was surprised. And then everyone began to analyze Soma's dish, while he revealed the process of making it. The more they ate, the more passionate they became, feeling as if this dish was melting away the winter cold, and the trees started budding. Ishiki shook hands with Soma and praised his delicious dish. When Megumi woke up to the scene of a boy shaking hands with a naked chef, she found it quite unusual. After everyone returned to their rooms, Ishiki said, "If you have any questions, feel free to ask me." Soma then earnestly asked how to enter the Elite 10, and if he defeated him, would he be ranked in the top 7? Seeing this, one might think that Ishiki would take it seriously, but suddenly he played dumb and praised Soma for his determination, saying that the students at Polar Star Dormitory should be like him. But deep down, Ishiki had already silently acknowledged Soma. Well, it's getting late, everyone. Let's head back to our rooms and get some rest. The next morning, when everyone woke up and headed to the kitchen, Soma was already sitting in the dining room, expressing his desire to challenge Ishiki for the title of Elite 10, but no one seemed interested. Instead, they began sitting at the table, waiting for Fumio to bring out the food. Ishiki, however, looked at Soma and explained more about the rules of engagement at the academy. Meanwhile, at a luxurious arena, Irina and a sumo wrestler were engaged in a verbal battle. The sumo wrestler refused to tolerate Irina's plan to demolish the Hot Pot Club to build a sixth kitchen. He challenged Irina to a cooking duel, where the stakes were high. If he won, Irina would have to relinquish her Elite 10 seat. But if she won, she could take over his club. Back in the kitchen, Ishiki explained to Soma that if he wanted to challenge the Elite 10, he needed to wager something of equal value. Simply being expelled from school wasn't enough. There were 3 conditions for such a challenge. The first condition is that the match must be proven to be valid, the second is that there must be judges, and the third is that both parties must agree to the conditions for the match to be considered a Shokugeki. In the ongoing Shokugeki, Irina emerged victorious against the sumo wrestler. He questioned the audience why his dish didn't win. Irina tasted the sumo wrestler's lobster hot pot, which was delicious as if swimming in the sea. However, its aftertaste was like a herd of hippopotamuses running by. She pointed out numerous shortcomings of his dish. He disagreed, but when he tasted Irina's dish, it hit him like another sumo wrestler punching him straight in the face, leaving him impressed and convinced. Irina also showed footage of the club being demolished by a bulldozer. On the other side, Ishiki watched Soma's departure and hoped that he would become a star in the academy, eagerly anticipating it. The next morning, while Soma was still asleep, Ishiki called him to wake up and asked him to come down to the garden to help him out a bit. Yoshiko was also woken up, and both of them went to the garden at the back. At that moment, Ippu was busy making sawdust for smoking dishes, Reko, who specialized in dishes made from wheat germ. Yoshiko was skilled in handling chicken and had her own chicken coop, while Ishiki owned a small vegetable garden with various types of vegetables. In the distance, Ishiki was diligently working in the garden with his white loincloth, looking quite sturdy, but it must be admitted that the vegetables he grew looked very good. He offered Soma a tomato to try, and its flesh was firm and juicy. Everyone began gardening together, laughing and chatting happily. Then Megumi prepared breakfast for everyone, which was rice balls. They all enjoyed the meal, and Megumi enthusiastically introduced her dishes to everyone. Finally, they shared a warm cup of tea for dessert. At this point, Soma asked why Megumi couldn't perform like this in class, which hit her quite hard. She explained that it was due to her weakened state of mind. After the morning, they headed to school. As for Soma, he invited Megumi to join a cooking club with him, and they chose the Dawn Research Society, which is a dish served over rice. In the clubroom, they saw the club president who looked like a genuine gangster with his slicked back hair. He introduced himself as Kenichi, the leader of the club. He mentioned that the club was about to disband. Soma looked at his recipe book and praised every recipe, making him feel recognized and excited. However, he mentioned that regardless, the club was about to be disbanded because Irina wanted to renovate and rejuvenate such clubs, so they had been planned to be phased out. When pushed to the brink, there would be a Shokugeki, and it was all part of her plan. Surely, she would win and take over the club. Upon hearing this, the club members decided to leave. As soon as they finished speaking, a group of people came in and said to tear down the clubhouse and rebuild it. Among them was one of Irina's henchmen, Ikumi Mito, a dark-skinned girl who looked quite attractive. She even threatened Konishi, saying he didn't stand a chance, and he left. When she found him making fun of her, she used a knife to cut off part of his hair directly, which surprisingly made him look handsome. Her nickname is Meat Queen because all her dishes are related to meat and have never scored below an A. Her profound understanding of meat ranks her at the top of the academy. She also threatened, saying that no matter what he did, he wouldn't win against my top-grade meat. Soma said if it's only about the quality of the ingredients, then just wait, senpai, the Shokugeki is on me. This shows how confident Soma is. Seeing him like this, Mito said that if I win this match, you have to pack your bags and leave this school. One would think Soma would be scared, but he's never known fear since he was a child. He immediately accepted the challenge, and if you lose, you'll join this Dawn Club. Okay, agreed. 2 days before the match, Konishi, with his head bandaged, planned and discussed with Soma and Megumi. He talked about Mito's meat, which is truly outstanding. Taking just one bite, it was so juicy and succulent, it slipped straight down the throat. In general, he was both excited and depressed at the thought that his side might not have a chance to win. But Soma said, our Dawn is delicious, nutritious, and affordable. We'll regain the advantage for Dawn and we'll win. Let's start practicing then. Soma asked Konishi about the club's budget, and at that moment, Konishi's face turned sour as he pulled out an empty wallet. So Soma had to rush to withdraw his living expenses. But the money his dad sent him was just barely enough to get by. This is really tight. Well, let's use it for now. As soon as he returned to the club, Konishi pulled out a manual on don dishes and started practicing. The first dish was fried beef, and when he tried it, it was actually not bad but still not enough to hit the taste buds directly. Next up was a dish combining beef with ingredients like sugar, beef fat, and raw eggs, but it was still no match. Throughout the day, despite Soma constantly making dishes for Konishi to try, it still wasn't enough to beat Mito, causing Kenichi's body to turn white. Even Megumi's encouragement didn't help. But then Megumi reminded Soma of something that sparked an idea in Soma's mind. That maybe they could defeat Mito's dish with affordable meat, so they immediately began experimenting. The beef was tenderized and marinated in finely chopped onions on both sides, then fried in oil. The onions were also added to cook with the beef broth, and finally poured over a bowl of rice. That's the chapilan steak. When the two tried it, the beef could be easily cut with wooden chopsticks, and they both enjoyed it very much. Soma explained that the onions contained enzymes that tenderized the meat, while Konishi looked at the rice bowl and wondered if this cheap meat dish could defeat Mito's top-grade meat. On the day of the match, Mito was having a headache trying to choose which bra to wear. So she just wore this red and white outfit. The match between Mito and Soma's Shokugeki made the whole school excited to watch this match. Seeing the crowd here, Megumi was also nervous, talking to Soma, telling him to stay calm during the match. Wait, isn't she the one who needs to stay calm? Today's host is Urara, making the boys cheer because she's so cute, while the girls are jealous. At this point, the two opponents began to enter the arena. On one side was Mito, the meat queen, while on the other side stood Soma. The boys kept pressuring Soma due to his audacity during the opening ceremony. After the judges and the host finished their preparations, the main match officially began. Mito brought out premium-grade meat as her competition ingredient and then skillfully used a knife to remove any lesser quality portions from the large meat block. As a result, she obtained a piece of meat with an incredibly perfect ratio of lean meat to fat. Afterward, Mito smelled the piece of meat and confirmed that it met her standards. She began searing the meat to cook the outer surface evenly before placing it into the microwave. On Soma's side, he was finally chopping a large amount of onions and pulled out a discounted supermarket beef from his bag to compete against Mito's A5 grade beef. Everyone was stunned, not knowing if Soma was foolish or clever. The boys threw water bottles in protest. After processing his piece of meat, Mito meticulously assessed it until it reached the perfect doneness before slicing it into perfect portions. She sliced the meat as if playing a piano piece. Meanwhile, Soma was frying a large quantity of onions. Mito taunted him, stating that he was just an amateur chef. However, Soma calmly replied, "Watch closely, I will present a dish that defeats your A5 grade beef." As time neared its end, both sides completed their dishes. Finally, time was up, and they presented their dishes to the judges. Mito's dish was a don made with a 5 grade beef. With just one bite, the judges felt as if each piece of meat was melting in their mouths, incredibly delicious. Next up was Soma's dish, also a don. Initially, the judges thought there was no contest against Mito's A5 grade beef. However, after tasting Soma's dish, they couldn't stop eating and analyzing each detail. The rice was incredibly delicious, mixed with soaked plums, giving it a subtle sourness that prevented any feeling of heaviness. The tender and fragrant beef combined with the slightly sour rice made it impossible to stop eating. Soma revealed that he also added soaked plums to the rice, giving it a light acidity that made the dish more enjoyable. The combination of tender beef and slightly sour rice was irresistible. Mito, feeling challenged, argued with Soma about the quality of her beef. Soma handed her a bowl of rice, telling her to try it herself. After tasting a piece, Mito was overwhelmed by the deliciousness, unable to stop eating. She remembered her painful past and then shed tears. This time, Soma emerged as the winner, and Irina instructed her secretary to strip Mito of her authority. Mito, feeling both angry and impressed, couldn't resist Soma's charming smile and dashed away, caught in a sudden love-at-first-sight moment. It was a glorious victory for Soma. The next day, to fulfill her commitment, Mito went to the Don Club for activities. But after the match, Soma told Konishi that he wouldn't join the club and wished him good luck. Now, the club only had Mito and Konishi left. However, that was fine because Konishi would lead Mito to the peak of dawn. "Get your dirty hands off me. You like breaking arms, huh?" Today, the teachers seemed to be secretly discussing something, and they said that the time for the students had come. Over on Soma's side, he was informed that the school would organize an outdoor excursion for the students, but Megumi was visibly anxious. Seeing this, everyone explained to Soma that this was a hellish training period for our high school students. We will delve deep into the mountains for rigorous cooking assignments every day, and if we don't complete them, we will be expelled on the spot. Ishiki mentioned that this trip would select talents from the current students, and his class would likely filter out a few dozen people. Megumi felt like her soul was leaving her body, and finally, Ishiki wished everyone to return with a smiling face after the training session. The day of the outing arrived, and everyone gathered to board the bus to a famous 5-star resort area. This resort area belonged to the academy. They gathered in the lobby, and it seemed like everyone was eyeing Soma with an extremely dangerous look. The teacher stood up and announced that they would have a 6-day, 5-night camping trip, receiving cooking assignments every day. If they didn't complete them, they would fail and be forcibly sent back to the academy and expelled. The judges would be the school's alumni. As soon as they appeared, the pink-haired person expelled the person next to Soma for using strong-smelling hairspray that affected the taste of the food. He was Shinomiya, the head chef of a French restaurant. He also had an extremely intimidating face. The remaining graduates were all big names in the culinary world. And the most prominent figure here was Rin, the head chef and a member of the board of directors of this resort. He stood up and briefly explained the tasks everyone had to do over the next 6 days. Those who fell short or couldn't stay would immediately be expelled. Everyone should try to accomplish their own goals, and for now, it was time to rest. Tomorrow would be the beginning. Today was the first training session, and the judge was Hinako. She only allowed people to pair up for activities, so when Megumi saw Soma, she rushed over to pair up with him for safety. At this moment, a blonde guy stepped on Soma's foot hard and said he had been looking forward to facing Soma. "It's good to be excited, but please get your foot off mine." Hinako was sitting in a corner snacking and instructed everyone to prepare a main Japanese dish using the ingredients available around them. The surroundings offered abundant resources from rivers and mountains, cooking utensils, fishing rods, and spices. There was a barrier, and if anyone gathered ingredients beyond it, they would be disqualified. So they were instructed to abide by the rules. The ingredients were located outside, so they were encouraged to go out and find them before returning to cook. The deadline was set at 2 hours starting now. People rushed outside to gather ingredients, leaving only Soma's group and the blonde guy's group remaining. The blonde guy approached Hinako, asking her to evaluate the dishes from both sides to determine who made the tastier dish. However, Hinako declined, saying it wasn't her job. Soma smirked mockingly at the blonde guy. His younger brother also laughed uncontrollably at his brother's disappointment. "Oh come on, let's just go find ingredients and stop arguing. Everyone is rushing out to catch fish. And Soma's group is no exception." After gathering the ingredients, when he returns, he sees the blonde guy returning at the same time. So Soma couldn't resist teasing him a bit. Inside the room, the blonde guy criticizes everyone, saying they lack professionalism and creativity, all using fish to cook. He brings out a duck, saying there's not only duck but also rabbit and chicken around here, then heads to his kitchen to start preparing. The chubby guy Terajami skillfully and precisely prepares the duck, while his older brother Takumi wastes no movements, continuously preparing and putting food into the oven. Remembering Soma's words at the opening ceremony, Takumi is determined to surpass him at any cost. They both wield their half-moon knives and, with their skills, create dishes showcasing their true abilities. Finally, within just 1 hour, they complete their dishes and bring them to Hinako to taste. It's roasted duck served with green sauce. Hinako tries a piece and feels like she's in the wilderness, and when it reaches her stomach, it's like she's at a classical music concert. It's truly delicious. She praises both of them for their meticulous cooking process, and they both pass this round. Both brothers come from a family of French restaurant owners, and when they reached school age, their father advised them to hand over the management of the restaurant and study cooking. They brought their enthusiasm to the opening ceremony and, inspired by Soma's passionate speech, both wanted to defeat him. Now, after tasting Takumi's dish, Hinako decides to make a comparison, especially if there's a dish that can match Takumi's. So they both decide to compete, and Hinako adds a condition that the loser must kneel down and admit defeat 3 times to the winner, but Megumi is exempted. Being cute is also an advantage. After assessing the situation for a while, to surpass Takumi's dish, Soma comes up with the dish he's prepared, then he writes a list for Megumi and tells her to gather the ingredients. As for him, he goes up to Hinako and asks if they're allowed to use the ingredients within the barrier. After confirming that they are, he goes to get Hinako's kaki snack and tells Takumi that this is their key ingredient, then goes with Megumi to search for other ingredients. Megumi is in charge of finding vegetables, while Soma goes to find chicken eggs. Over here, the students are struggling because everyone is getting disqualified by Hinako. During the school trip, she's known as the queen of being strict. Hinako remarks that all the students are only making boring grilled fish dishes, so there's still time for them to redo it as many times as they want. So everyone rushes off to find new ingredients. With only 15 minutes left and Soma still not back, Takumi is getting anxious because if he doesn't return in time, there won't be any competition left. At this point, Soma has returned, with still 15 minutes left, feeling extremely relaxed. With the collected ingredients, both of them begin to prepare and cook. He breaks open the pile of seeds and makes a crispy fish jacket, and the fried fish dish is complete. Hinako tries a piece and feels that this dish is fantastic. The inside is tender while the outside is crispy, and the taste of the fish feels like she's swimming in the sea and immersing herself in the dish. This dish was inspired by Soma's idea from fried rice balls. After some contemplation, Hinako approves Soma's dish. After the competition ends, some teams succeed while others kneel down, disappointed and in tears. Takumi and Soma approach Hinako to ask about the assessment of which dish is better. Hinako starts to ponder, sometimes leaning towards one side, sometimes the other. But ultimately, she's called away urgently by Rin, so she leaves the two arguing behind and rushes over to Rin's location. Both of them still argue about whose dish is better, and in the end, Takumi is told that there will be a day when he'll be challenged to a Shokugeki, so he should wait for that day. See you again. But as they get on the bus, both of them end up sitting next to each other like this. Can this be considered as meeting again? Thank you for watching the entire video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, like, share, and also hit the notification bell to receive updates when the channel releases new videos. Thank you.